Hare Krishna devotees, welcome to our Sunday Bhagavad class. In the last class, we were discussing about the progress that one makes on the path of Bhakti. So this is a new section within the second chapter of the first canto, which will take us from Sloka 16 to 22. So let me just share my screen here. What we will do is we will just quickly read the shlokas from 16 to 22. And then we can continue with shloka number 18. So we began with shloka 16 last week, where the shloka said, O twice-born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Sometimes when we undertake the spiritual journey, we all enter this journey or enter this path in different ways because we all have different tastes. We have different levels of consciousness. But at the same time, even if we have different levels of consciousness, we are attracted by different things. So here, Suta Goswami is declaring emphatically that if we just learn to serve a pure Vaishnava, just through the process of service alone, that one will develop the love for hearing about the messages of the Supreme Lord. So sometimes hearing leads to service because you first conceptualize who are you, who is the Supreme Lord, and what's your relationship, and then you begin the journey of service. Sometimes you enter the path of bhakti through service until you get a philosophical understanding of the tattva. And it's through service you have, you develop an attraction for hearing, right? It makes sense. Once you learn to love the person that you serve, you begin with service just because it's something that's innate in you that you want to serve a great Vaishnava. Over a period of time, you will be ready to hear from that great Vaishnava and follow their instructions. So we all approach this, this beautiful path of bhakti from different points in our life, from different points in our heart. What actually attracts us to Krishna? Sometimes service attracts us to Krishna eventually. And in the 17th shloka that we did, what is actually happening to that bhakta who has committed himself or herself to serving a great Vaishnava? Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is Paramatma, super soul in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So through seva, you develop the love for hearing about the Supreme Lord. And when you develop the love for hearing about the Supreme Lord, that hearing itself strips one away from all the material entanglements that is holding us back from surrendering to Krishna. And hearing the message of Krishna or hearing about Sri Krishna, even if it is heard, and furthermore, if it is chanted, whatever you hear, if you repeat, if you share, that itself is also purifying. So it's like a double bonus for us. Hearing is purifying. Repeating what you heard is also purifying because the message itself is virtuous. So of course the message is going to have a positive influence on all of us. It has to have a positive influence on our consciousness. Nothing can go wrong when it comes to this factor. But we have to be sincere. We have to be truthful here, Sutta Goswami is saying. For the truthful devotee, the Lord is the benefactor. The Lord knows what is in your heart's desire. So now let's go to shloka number 18. Sorry, I already have the shloka opened. So let's recite the shloka. This is a shloka we recite as part of the Mangala Charan, and it just so happens that today we're going to discuss this particular shloka. Nashta prayeshva bhadreshu
Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavatyuttama Shloke
Bhagavatyuttama Sloke
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtike.
Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki.
Word for word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nashta,
Nashta,
destroyed.
destroyed.
Prayeshu,
Prayeshu,
almost to nil.
almost to nil.
Abhadreshu,
Abhadreshu,
all that is inauspicious.
all that is inauspicious.
Nityam,
Nityam,
regularly.
regularly.
Bhagavata,
Bhagavata,
Srimad Bhagavatam,
Srimad Bhagavatam,
or the pure devotee.
are the pure devotee.
Sevaya,
Evaya,
by serving.
by serving.
Bhagavati,
Bhagavati,
unto the personality of Godhead.
unto the personality of Godhead.
Uttama,
Uttama,
transcendental.
transcendental.
Shloke,
Sloke,
prayers.
prayers.
Bhaktihi,
Bhaktihi,
loving service.
loving service.
Bhavati,
Bhavati,
comes into being.
comes into being.
Naishtiki,
Naistiki,
irrevocable.
irrevocable.
Translation, by regular attendance in classes,
By regular attendance in classes,
on the Bhagavatam,
and the Bhagavatam,
and by rendering of service to the pure devotee,
and by rendering of service to the pure devotee,
all that is troublesome to the heart
all that is troublesome to the heart
is almost completely destroyed.
is almost completely destroyed.
And loving service unto the personality of Godhead,
And loving service unto the personality of Godhead,
who is praised with transcendental songs,
who is praised with the transcendental songs,
is established as an irrevocable fact.
is established as an irrevocable fact.
So before we get to the purport by Srila Prabhupada, let's just recap the stages that we went through in the previous two shlokas, which is shloka number 16 and 17. Satam Kripa was the first stage, where through the association of a pure Vaishnava, you receive the causeless mercy of the devotee of Krishna. So that means this happens even before your faith has developed. So normally we say it starts with Shraddha. So two things were discussed in Shloka 16, Satam Kripa and Mahat Seva. One, by coming in contact with the pure devotee, you receive their causeless mercy. And what happens after that? When you begin to serve such devotees, you develop Shraddha. So before Shraddha, there are two steps, Satam Kripa and Mahat Seva. Shraddha means you develop faith. By serving devotees, you develop faith in God. And then you develop the desire to take the shelter of Guru. So the fourth step, which is the step after Shraddha. Normally after Shraddha we say Sadhu Sangha. But here after Shraddha it is Guru Padashrayaha, which was referenced in the 16th shloka, which is seeking the shelter at the lotus feet of Guru. The word Tirtha in that particular shloka is referencing Guru. And then in the 17th shloka, one more step was added after Guru Padashraya, which is Bhajaneshu Spriha, which means you develop an eagerness to worship the Supreme Lord after you have taken shelter of Guru. You develop that eagerness to worship Krishna. So, Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and Anartha Nivritti are the first 5 steps that we know traditionally, that we have read in Nectar of Devotion. But here it is Satam Kripa, Mahat Seva, Shraddha, Guru Padashrayah, Bhajaneshu Spriha. And then, of course, you are getting rid of your anarthas. So in this particular shloka, we'll dive into 3 more steps after the 5th step. And we'll do that after we read Prabhupada's Bhagavad. So Prabhupada is writing here is the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart, which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. The remedy is the association of the Bhagavata. So if you look at the word Bhagavata here, there are 2 meanings to the word Bhagavata. One meaning to the word Bhagavata means the book itself, Srimad Bhagavata. So there is the book Bhagavata, and then there is a pure devotee Bhagavata. So the word has 2 meanings, and both of them hold true. So Prabhupada is writing, the remedy is the association of the Bhagavatas. There are 2 types of Bhagavatas, namely the book Bhagavata and the devotee Bhagavata. Both the Bhagavatas are competent remedies, and both of them or either of them can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles. So you can serve a pure devotee and still follow this path of bhakti. Or you can serve Srimad Bhagavatam and still follow this path of bhakti. A devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata because the devotee Bhagavata leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavata. Why can you follow a devotee Bhagavata? Prabhupada is writing because the devotee Bhagavata is following the book Bhagavata. And what is this book Bhagavata is full of? It's full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees. The Bhagavatam, you cannot separate the devotee from the Lord. There's nothing in the Bhagavatam where it's only speaking about the Supreme Lord, because the Supreme Lord is the most attractive when he is with his devotees. So hence Prabhupada is writing, a devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata because the devotee Bhagavata leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavata, and the book Bhagavata is full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees who are also Bhagavatas. Bhagavata book and person are identical. So the remedy, the dual benefit is if we're reading the Bhagavatam and also following a Bhagavata, then there is a dual benefit for you. You could say it's a fast track method. But in a sense, there's no difference between the two. You are still associating with the Supreme Lord. When you associate with the person Bhagavata and when you're associating with the book Bhagavata, you're associating with the Supreme Lord. So when you're in touch with the Supreme Lord, how is it that you can't be purified? It's just a natural outcome of the process. Hence, Prabhupada is saying this is the easiest remedy if you want to remove obstacles that is preventing you from getting closer to Krishna. This is the only thing that we have to do. The devotee Bhagavata is a direct representative of Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. So by pleasing the devotee Bhagavata, one can receive the benefit of the book Bhagavata. You don't have to be erudite scholar to read the Bhagavatam. By serving a pure devotee, you know who is the Supreme Personality of God. And remember, Prabhupada writes in the Bhagavad Gita, if you know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Krishna himself says, if you know me, you know everything. Because if you know Krishna, what is left to know? If you've understood who Krishna is, you've understood who you are, and what's your position in relation to Krishna, what is left to know? There's nothing else left to know. You just completely surrender to Krishna, knowing that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, Prabhupada is writing, so by pleasing the devotee Bhagavata, one can receive the benefit of the book Bhagavata. Human reason fails to understand how by serving the devotee Bhagavata or the book Bhagavata, one gets gradual promotion on the path of devotion. So Prabhupada himself is saying, we may be skeptical when we say, if we follow a pure devotee or if we are attached to Srimad Bhagavatam and following the instructions of the Srimad Bhagavatam, how can it purify us? But actually, these are facts explained by Srila Narada Deva, who happened to be a maidservant's son in his previous life. The maidservant was engaged in the menial service of the sages, and thus he also came into contact with them. So, who was serving the sages who had come to visit that particular ashram? Narada Muni, in his previous life as a young child, his mother was serving as a menial servant of the sages. And because his mother had come in contact with the rishis and the sages, Narada Muni, in his previous life as a young child, picked up Bhakti. And simply by associating with them and accepting the remnants of foodstuff left by the sages, the son of the maidservant got the chance to become the great devotee and personality, Srila Narada Deva. So Prabhupada is explaining to us, how did Narada Muni become the greatest devotee of the Lord? One, his mother was serving the sages. Two, Narada Muni was taking the Mahaprasadam that the sages left behind. So it is in our culture that we should take prasadam that a pure devotee has tasted. When you offer bhoga to the Lord, that is called prasadam. You can also say in some cultures it's also called Mahaprasadam. That's why we begin the verse with Mahaprasade Govinde Nama Vaishnave Brahmane. But when a pure devotee's lips have touched and honored that Mahaprasadam, it becomes Mahaprasadam. Not only are you receiving the mercy of the Supreme Lord Krishna, you are simultaneously getting the mercy of Guru. Therefore, in our culture, it is quite acceptable for us to accept the remnants of great devotees of the Lord. As a matter of fact, we should hanker to get the remnants of Guru Prasadam. I remember once we had gone to Calicut. His Holiness Bhaktivinoda Swami Maharaj was inaugurating a center there next to the NIT premises. And they had, the devotees here in Bangalore had invited me. And when this small little Bhakti center was inaugurated, it was not a temple, it was just a Bhakti center. That was my first experience of this, what Prabhupada is writing here about Narada Muni tasting the remnants of what the sages had left behind on their plantain on the banana leaves. So after all the homa had happened, the devotees were serving Maharaj, and after Maharaj finished his prasadam that was laid out on banana leaf, I noticed all the Prabhujis rushing to Maharaj's leaf that was still on the table. Maharaj had left to wash his hands. And everybody was just happily putting their finger on the banana leaf and putting it in their mouth, So the eagerness with which they showed, I was quite surprised, because that was my first experience of eating off of someone else's plate. But it is necessary to get the remnants of pure devotees of the Lord, because then it is double mercy, So Prabhupada writes, and simply by associating with them and accepting the remnants of foodstuff left by the sages, the son of the maidservant got the chance to become the great devotee and personality, Srila Narada Deva. These are the miraculous effects of the association of Bhagavatas. So Prabhupada is saying, actually there is no rhyme or reason why this process works, but it works. It doesn't seem rational at all, but it works. And to understand these effects practically, it should be noted that by such sincere association of the Bhagavatas, one is sure to receive transcendental knowledge very easily, with the result that he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. So simply by associating with the pure devotee, by serving the pure devotee in a very sincere way, through the association, you get that transcendental knowledge. That means earlier, if you had thought, okay, if I read this Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, it's all too complicated. But once I come in association of a pure devotee and I serve such pure devotees with sincerity, then automatically the transcendental knowledge comes to you. And when that comes to you, what happens? Prabhupada is saying, then you become fixed up. You reach that stage of nishtha, which is talked about in this particular shloka, the 18th shloka. So you become firmly fixed up. I mean, there's no more confusion in your head as to who should I worship, why should I worship, should I worship. These things get decimated. You no longer have any doubts anymore. The more progress is made in devotional service under the guidance of the Bhagavatas, the more one becomes fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Which means even your devotion has to be under the guidance of someone. One cannot practice bhakti independently. It has to be done in the association of Vaishnavas and under the guidance of senior Vaishnavas. Then you become more fixed up in the transcendent loving service of the Lord. The messages of the book Bhagavata, therefore, have to be received from the devotee Bhagavata. And the combination of these two Bhagavatas will help the neophyte devotee to make progress on and on. So Prabhupada is saying the combination of book Bhagavata and person Bhagavata is very, very potent. Without you even striving hard, you will make progress. So as we said, there are 3 additional stages referenced in this particular shloka about the stages of bhakti. So this particular stage is called the taste. Remember the last one we left was you develop a taste for worship. So that bhakti seed that unbeknownst to you has been planted in your heart by a pure devotee begins to sprout. So this stage is called bhakti, the 6th stage described by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is called bhakti. And then the 7th stage that is also referenced here is called anartha pagamam, which means the disappearance of all obstacles on the path of bhakti. All inauspicious things that has been withholding you from making progress, including things like namaparad, they are completely destroyed. So this stage is called anartha pagamam. And then the 8th stage that is also described here is called nishtha, steadiness. You become fixed up. So these are the next 3 stages in that 14-stage process of bhakti. So let's go to shloka number 19 now. Tada rajastamo bhavaha
Tada rajastamo bhavaha
kamalobhadayaschaye
kamalobhadayaschaye
cheta etairanavidham
etairanavidham
thitam sattve prasidati.
stitham sattve prasidati.
Tada,
Tada,
at that time,
at that time,
rajaha,
rajaha,
in the mode of passion,
in the mode of passion,
tamaha,
tamaha,
the mode of ignorance,
the mode of ignorance,
bhavaha,
bhavaha,
the situation,
the situation,
kama,
kama,
lust and desire,
lust and desire,
lobha,
lobha,
hankering,
hankering,
adayaha,
adayaha,
others,
others,
cha,
cha,
and
and
ye,
ye,
whatever they are,
whatever they are,
chetaha,
chetaha,
the mind,
the mind,
etaihi,
etaihi,
by these,
by these,
anavidham,
anavidham,
without being affected,
without being affected,
thitam,
stitham,
being fixed,
being fixed,
sattve,
sattve,
in the mode of goodness,
in the mode of goodness,
prasidati,
prasidati,
thus becomes fully satisfied.
thus becomes fully satisfied.
Translation: as soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart,
As soon as irrevocable loving service is established in the heart,
the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance,
the effects of nature's modes of passion and ignorance,
such as lust, desire, and hankering,
such as lust, desire, and hankering,
disappear from the heart.
disappear from the heart.
Then the devotee is established in goodness,
Then the devotee is established in goodness,
and he becomes completely happy.
and he becomes completely happy.
So after the stage of Nishtha, we are now talking about Ruchi. Ruchi and also Asakti. The stages from what is that? It will be 6 and 7 from that 9-stage process. So those 2 stages are discussed here. Prabhupada writes, a living being in his normal constitutional position is fully satisfied in spiritual bliss. Actually, all the living being is searching for is the spiritual bliss. It just so happens we get caught up in material things, and pretty soon we don't know what is real happiness. We've forgotten what is real happiness. The state of existence is called Brahma Bhuta or Atmananda, or the state of self-satisfaction. This self-satisfaction is not like the satisfaction of the inactive fool. The inactive fool is in the state of foolish ignorance, whereas the self-satisfied Atmanandi is transcendental to the material state of existence. There are a lot of people who may say, I'm also very satisfied with my life. So Prabhupada is just distinguishing between those who foolishly think that they are satisfied versus those who are genuinely satisfied because they are self-realized. They are Brahma Bhuta or Atmananda. The stage of perfection is attained as soon as one is fixed in irrevocable. Irrevocable means something that cannot be changed. Once you've gone in that direction, you will not make a U-turn and come back. Devotional service is not inactivity, but the unalloyed activity of the soul. So anytime you talk of bhakti, it is a activity based on the desire of the soul. if you recall the 18-day program that we did, Karma Yoga is based on bodily concept. Jnana Yoga is based on your appealing to your intelligence. Dhyana Yoga is all about trying to control your mind. So you've covered your body, physical body, you've covered your mind, you've covered your intelligence. What's left? Spirit soul is left. So bhakti is the natural inclination for the soul, because then it experiences that full ananda, which is of course not accepted by other schools of thought, especially Advaitism. But if you look at it very logically, it makes sense. Bhakti is the most appealing and naturally fulfilling, joyous process for the spirit soul. I was actually, just before this class, listening to another very well-known institution, the head of that institution. There was a Q&A session in relation to this Ram Mandir. And they were talking just the opposite. People who have already transcended bhakti, for them jnana is topmost. I'm not sure how they support that answer based on the Bhagavad Gita, because the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord makes it very, very clear. Especially in the Chatushloke. And also in chapter 12, where the ladder comes down. So anyway, the soul's activity becomes adulterated in contact with matter. And as such, the diseased activities are expressed in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. So you develop all these diseases, and these diseases are based on your physical body and your subtle body, in the form of lust, desire, hankering, inactivity, foolishness, and sleep. So if you want to cure this eternal disease, or rather this disease that comes in these cycles of birth and death, then the best medicine is bhakti. The medicine that will work quickest and fastest to cure you of your ailments. The effect of devotional service becomes manifest by complete elimination of these effects of passion and ignorance, which means, Prabhupada is saying, when you've crossed that stage of nishtha, which is firm faith in the Supreme Lord Krishna, and you've developed that genuine ruchi, that the heart is no longer pierced by all of these sensory things that you're chasing, then you reach that stage of genuine desire for Krishna. That means this disease is caused by tamoguna and rajagun. If you've come to the stage, that means you are in sattvagun stage, which is the perfect, the springboard for really developing your love for Krishna. Which means those who are in this stage, who have just genuine ruchi and have also developed this asakti, which is a firm attachment to Krishna, for them, they are no longer under the influence of Rajagun and Tamo. The devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness. So Prabhupada is clarifying for you. He's not saying a pure devotee is fixed at once in the mode of goodness. Even if you're a neophyte devotee and you've just started, the minute you start chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, the Lord has said, yes, you're already in the Sattvagun. And he makes further progress to rise to the position of Vasudeva, or the state of unmixed sattva or shuddha sattva. Only in this shuddha sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord. So once you have situated yourself in the mode of goodness, then by continuing to follow the guidance and instructions of Guru, you catapult yourself into the Shuddha Sattva state by the mercy of Guru. I was listening to a wonderful lecture. As I mentioned, the acronym was RAM. It just so happened it was in relation to the Ram Mandir. His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was giving a lecture in Vrindavan. I think earlier today or yesterday, I don't know when it was. And Prabhu was very deftly using the acronym RAM to talk about Lord Ram's experience using that acronym, Srila Prabhupada's experience using that acronym, our experience with this Rama Janmabhoomi using that acronym, and then our personal experiences of how to overcome our own doubts, etc., using that acronym. So if we have time, I can just summarize for you this beautiful session that Prabhu took today. So in that particular session, Prabhu was talking about a past, how you develop pure affection for the Lord, and how sometimes even among devotee communities, there may be a lot of differences in opinion. So it just so happened that Prabhupada had a god brother in Vrindavan who had taken initiation maybe 10, 15 years earlier than Prabhupada from their Guru Maharaj, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada. So there was some misgivings among that senior Vaishnava towards Prabhupada. And obviously, when you've been practicing devotion for so long and suddenly you see someone much younger than you experiencing so much success, you may undergo some some anxiety, maybe some tinglings of jealousy. So apparently this other senior Vaishnava, sannyasi, when he used to interact with Prabhupada's disciples, he would tell them, you know what, you should come and listen to my classes. I will take you to Krishna directly, or some such thing like that. You know, I will tell you all about the Lord's Leelas and pastimes in Vrindavan. Prabhupada in his classes and also with his disciples never really focused on the pastimes of the Lord as much as understanding the basic philosophical concepts that he was trying to get across. That bhakti is the fastest and easiest way to get to Krishna. So Prabhupada didn't dwell too much time on pastimes of the Lord, because he was working with such a sense of urgency to just get the basic concepts across. And so the disciples of Prabhupada came and told Prabhupada, this is what this senior Swamiji is saying, Maharaj is saying. So Prabhupada immediately said, I don't want you to ever meet him again. Do not talk to him. He will contaminate you. So sometime later, this devotee and disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left his body. So the disciples of Prabhupada came back and asked Prabhupada, where did he go? Did he go to Vaikuntha or did he go to hell? Because Prabhupada had used some very strong language to forbid them from going and interacting with the other Vaishnava, who was his senior god brother. And of course, the disciples were expecting an answer like, oh no, he's gone to hell. Prabhupada said, he's gone to Vaikuntha. And they were so shocked. They said, but Prabhupada, you use such harsh language against that Maharaj. And Prabhupada told them, oh, my Guru Maharaj is so powerful. Because he's done so much seva for my Guru Maharaj has taken him back to the spiritual world. So His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu was explaining, we should not misunderstand disagreements among Vaishnavas. So Prabhupada was trying to protect his disciples from being taken away by someone who may have not had the best intentions for his disciples. Therefore, Prabhupada instructed them, I do not want you to go and meet him ever again. I don't want you to take his association. That didn't mean that Prabhupada thought that this personality was not a Vaishnava. Prabhupada was very clear. This Vaishnava had also served his Guru, and therefore his Guru would have taken him back to the spiritual world. So Prabhupada never said he's not a devotee. He just instructed his disciples and he said, if you associate with him, he's like a serpent, he's envious, he will contaminate you. But Prabhupada never told his disciples he's not a Vaishnava. So Prabhupada accepted that he was also a Vaishnava. He was also trying to fulfill his Guru Maharaj's instructions, but he was going about it not perhaps in the best of ways possible, with the best of intentions. So the disciples of Prabhupada were shocked that Prabhupada said he's definitely gone back to Vaikuntha. Why? Because he did service to Bhagavata. And that Bhagavata took him back to the spiritual world. So here Prabhupada is writing, only in the Shuddha Sattva state can one always see Krishna face to face by dint of pure affection for the Lord. A devotee is always in the mode of unalloyed goodness. Therefore, he harms no one. But the non-devotee, however educated he may be, is always harmful. Because he can misguide you. He does not know the truth. Whatever he speaks is not based on scriptures. So if you just speak because you think you're intelligent and you know everything, then you may end up misguiding a lot of people. Therefore, non-devotee association is considered harmful, especially for a neophyte. A devotee is neither foolish nor passionate. The harmful, foolish, and passionate cannot be devotees of the Lord. However, they may advertise themselves as devotees by outward dress. A devotee is always qualified with all the good qualities of God. Whatever qualities that the Lord has in him, the devotees will also exhibit that. Quantitatively, such qualifications may be different, but qualitatively, both the Lord and his devotee are one and the same. You may think, my God, all this time Prabhupada said, we are different, we are subservient, we are servants of the Lord. And here in one statement, he's saying, qualitatively, both the Lord and his devotee are one and the same. Simply because by practicing bhakti, you imbibe the qualities of the Lord. You develop those qualities that is present in it. Or rather, you exhibit those qualities. Those qualities are always there with us. It's just that those qualities were covered up because of the contamination of many births. So in one way, the pure devotee and the Lord are the same. In another way, they are different because they are not quantitatively alike. Right? A pure devotee knows his position as a devotee. He will never usurp the position of God and say, I am God. That's not what pure devotees do. Let's look at the 20th shloka. So that means in the 19th shloka, we've looked at Ruchi and Asakti. So now we will come to the 20th shloka. Evam prasanna manasaha
Evam prasanna manasaha
Bhagavat bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha
Bhagavat tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam
Sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangasya Jayate.
Evam.
Evam.
Thus.
Prasanna.
Enlivened. Manasaha. Of the mind. Bhagavat Bhakti. The devotional service of the Lord. Yogataha. By contact of. Bhagavat. Regarding the personality of Godhead. Tattva. Knowledge. Vijnanam. Scientific. Mukta. Liberated. Sangasya. Of the association. Jayate. Becomes effective.
becomes effective.
Translation. Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness,
Thus established in the mode of unalloyed goodness,
the man whose mind
the man whose mind
has been enlivened
has been enlivened
by contact with devotional service to the Lord,
by contact with devotional service to the Lord,
gains positive scientific knowledge
gains positive scientific knowledge
of the personality of Godhead
of the personality of Godhead
in the stage of liberation
in the stage of liberation
from all material association.
from all material association.
So this is talking about prema, pure love. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, in the Bhagavad Gita 7.3, it is said that out of many thousands of ordinary men, one fortunate man endeavors for perfection in life. This is a shloka Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschit Yatati Siddhaye. That's that shloka, the third shloka of the seventh chapter. Mostly men are conducted by the modes of passion and ignorance. Thus, they are engaged always in lust, desire, hankerings, ignorance, and sleep. Out of many such man-like animals, there is actually a man who knows the responsibility of human life and thus tries to make life perfect by following the prescribed duties. So Prabhupada is writing, there are many men who are actually animals because they are too caught up with many, many desires. But out of those thousands of men, maybe one begins to think, hey, I've got a human body. What am I supposed to do with this? What's the purpose of receiving this human mind, this human intelligence? The ability to question. And out of many thousands, so let's say 1,000 such people search for, hey, what am I supposed to do? I'm a human being. So, and out of many thousands of such persons who have thus attained success in human life, one may know scientifically about the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Even out of those thousands of people who strive to learn what is this truth, only one out of them, Krishna says, actually understand who I am. In the same Bhagavad Gita 18.55, it is also said that scientific knowledge of Sri Krishna is understood only by the process of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga. So if you want to understand the science of who the Supreme Lord is, you have to approach this through the process of Bhakti Yoga. Krishna never says Jnana Yoga. The very same thing is confirmed herein in the above words. No ordinary man, or even one who has attained success in human life, can know scientifically or perfectly the personality of Godhead. Perfection of human life is attained when one can understand that he is not the product of matter, but is in fact spirit. And as soon as one understands that he has nothing to do with matter, he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. So when you recognize and realize, why am I just so caught up in these things? What is the benefit of chasing money? What is the benefit of chasing degrees? What is the benefit of chasing fame? When all of it is just going to end in an instant at the time of death. When you have that reality hit you, you will just say, I'm fed up with this. I don't want to be doing this. Yes, I need to take care of my body. I have to take care of my family. I have duties and responsibilities. To whatever extent I need to do it to fulfill my obligations, I will do it. But I am not going to stress out and compete with my neighbors. That's when your material desires just collapse. You just try to maintain the bare minimum so that you can have a peaceful life, so that you can focus on spirituality. So that's why Prabhupada is saying he at once ceases his material hankerings and becomes enlivened as a spiritual being. So then your goal is very clear. Today we'll talk about the plan versus purpose, based on the class that I was listening to right before this class of His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, using that acronym RAM. So this attainment of success is possible when one is above the modes of passion and ignorance, or in other words, when one is actually a Brahmana by qualification. So if you've given up all of your material desires and you're sincerely pursuing the path of spirituality, Prabhupada is saying, qualifications wise, you are a Brahmana. A Brahmana is the symbol of Sattva Guna, or the mode of goodness. And others who are not in the mode of goodness are either Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras, or less than the Shudras. Kshatriyas are under the influence of Rajogun. Vaishyas are under the influence of a combination of Rajogun and Tamogun. And Shudras are under the influence of Tamogun. The Brahmanical stage is the highest stage of human life because of its good qualities. So one cannot be a devotee unless one at least qualifies as a Brahmana. Which means if you are seen as a Vaishnava, you're automatically a Brahman. Because once you've come to that stage of Brahmana, only then you can become a devotee. So if you're a devotee, you're already a Brahmana. The devotee is already a Brahmana by action. But that is not the end of it. As referred to above, such a Brahmana has to become a Vaishnava, in fact, to be actually in the transcendental stage. To be considered a devotee, you have to be a Vaishnava. So a Brahmana cannot say, hey, I've reached the topmost rung, I'm happy, I've accomplished something in life. No, a Brahmana has to say, I now need to surrender to the Lord, I want to become a Vaishnava. Then you are practicing bhakti. A pure Vaishnava is a liberated soul and is transcendental even to the position of a Brahmana. So Prabhupada is clearly saying, here are the 4 varnas, but higher than the 4 varna, the highest is to be a devotee of the Lord. In the material stage, even a Brahmana is also a conditioned soul, because although in the Brahmanical stage, the conception of Brahman or transcendence is realized, scientific knowledge of the Supreme Lord is lacking. Let's say you've got all the good qualities of a Brahmana, but if you've not acknowledged that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, then what use is your Brahmanical qualities? One has to surpass the Brahmanical stage and reach the Vasudeva stage to understand the personality of Godhead, Krishna. The science of the personality of Godhead is the subject matter for study by the postgraduate students in the spiritual line. So this understanding who Krishna is not a kindergarten study. It's not high school content. It's not even college-based content. Prabhupada is saying anybody who's trying to understand who is Krishna and trying to serve Krishna, they are all postgraduates on the spiritual path. Foolish men or men with a poor fund of knowledge do not understand the Supreme Lord, and they interpret Krishna according to their respective whims. The fact is, however, that one cannot understand the science of the personality of Godhead unless one is freed from the contamination of the material modes, even up to the stage of a Brahmana. When a qualified Brahmana factually becomes a Vaishnava in the enlivened state of liberation, he can know what is actually the personality of God. So which means to understand who the Supreme Lord is, and therefore to come to that stage of surrender, you have to become a devotee of the Lord. It doesn't stop at getting all the nice good qualifications of being a Brahmana. So in this particular shloka, which is shloka number 20, we are looking at the stage of Rati. So after Ruchi and Asakti, one intermediary stage called Rati. Rati means fondness. Fondness for the process, fondness for Guru, fondness for Krishna. After this Rati stage, the fondness is actually prema, devotional love. After that stage, the next stage is darshanam, which means you experience the Lord in your personal life. So it's experience and realization together, which is called darshanam. So it gives you a new perspective of what the word darshan means. We go to the temple and we think we are taking darshan of the Lord. Yes, on one level we are taking darshan of the Lord. It is darshan for the eyes. What about darshan, that is the jnana chakshu darshan? That comes through intense sadhana. And then the 14th stage that ends with this particular shloka, number 20. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur calls it Harer Madhuryanubhava, which is direct experience of the Lord's sweetness, of Lord Hari's sweetness. Of course, this is equivalent to the bhava and prema stage in that 9-stage process, which is the highest stage for a jivatma to reach, this pure love for the Lord. So with that, we've covered the 14. We will look at those 14 again, but let's try and finish 21 and 22. Now Shloka 21 is talking about the results of following the bhakti process. Hridyate hridaya granthi.
Vidyate hridaya granthi.
Hridyante sarva samshayah.
Vidyante sarva samshaya.
Kriyante chasya karmani.
Kriyante chasya karmani.
Drishta evatmanishvare.
Drashta evatmanishvare.
Bhidyate,
Vidyate.
pierced.
Yes.
Hridaya,
Hridaya.
heart.
Heart.
Granthihi,
Grantihi.
knots.
Knots.
Chidyante,
Chidyante.
cut to pieces.
Cut to pieces.
Sarva,
Sarva.
all.
All.
Samshayaha,
Samshaya.
misgivings.
Misgivings.
Kriyante,
Kriyante.
terminated.
Terminated.
Cha,
Cha.
and.
And.
Asya,
Asya.
his.
His.
Karmani,
Karmani.
chain of fruitive actions.
Chain of relative action.
Drishte,
Drishte.
having seen.
Having seen.
Eva,
Eva.
certainly.
Certainly.
Atmani,
Atmani.
unto the self.
Unto the self.
Ishvare,
Ishvare.
dominating.
Dominating.
Translation. Thus the knot in the heart is pierced,
Thus the knot in the heart is pierced,
and all misgivings are cut to pieces.
and all misgivings are cut to pieces.
The chain of fruitive actions is terminated
The chain of fruitive actions is terminated
when one sees the self as mastered.
when one sees the self as master.
So what is actually getting unknotted, destroyed? All your material, whatever is remaining is just completely gone. When you see yourself as the master, that is not the same as when you see yourself as God. So let's see what Prabhupada is writing here. Attaining scientific knowledge of the personality of Godhead means seeing one's own self simultaneously. Prabhupada has always said, when you've realized God, you've also simultaneously realized yourself. But in the other paths, like Jnana Yoga and Dhyana Yoga, they may stop at self-realization, and therefore they may not have understood fully who the Supreme Lord is. So self-realization does not lead to Bhagavan realization. But Bhagavan realization automatically gives you self-realization. So you don't have to pursue the path of self-realization independently. If you pursue the path of becoming a servant of the Supreme Lord, you automatically achieve that self-realized state. As far as the identity of the living being as spirit self is concerned, there are a number of speculations and misgivings. The materialist does not believe in the existence of the spirit self, and empiric philosophers believe in the impersonal feature of the whole spirit without individuality of the living being. So, on the one hand, you have the materialists who don't believe that spirit soul even exists. Why bother? There is one life to live, may as well maza, enjoy yourself. Don't worry about things like karma and all. Karma is all concoction made up by stupid people, or at least that's what they may be thinking. On the other hand, you have the jnanis. Even though they read the Bhagavad Gita and even though they may be familiar with the Srimad Bhagavatam, still they are focused on the impersonal feature of the Lord. We don't know why. But the transcendentalists affirm that the soul and the super soul are two different identities. Qualitatively one, but quantitatively different. Qualitatively, how are we one? We exhibit some of the qualities that the Lord has. Quantitatively, we don't have those qualities in full or unlimitedly. That is restricted to the Supreme Lord. There are many other theories, but all these different speculations are at once cleared off as soon as Sri Krishna is realized in truth by the process of Bhakti Yoga, which means Bhakti Yoga leads to God realization and simultaneously to self realization. Sri Krishna is like the sun, and the materialistic speculations about the absolute truth are like the darkest midnight, where you think God may be this, God may be that. No, we don't have to speculate at all. God himself is saying who he is. Why do we need to speculate? That's the point that Prabhupada is making. Therefore, those who speculate God may be like this, God may be that, maybe it's this, maybe that. It's like for them it is the darkest of midnight because they're still searching. As soon as the Krishna sun is arisen within one's heart, the darkness of materialistic speculations about the absolute truth and the living beings is at once cleared off. Once you understand who Krishna is, there's no doubt about who you are. You know who you are, which is zero. Without Krishna, you are zero. With Krishna, you have value. So Krishna is that one, that number one before the zero. Zero by itself has no value. But the zero preceded by a one and then followed by many, many zeros has huge value. So in the presence of the sun, the darkness cannot stand. And the relative truths that were hidden within the dense darkness of ignorance become clearly manifested by the mercy of Krishna, who is residing in everyone's heart as a super soul. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.11, which is the Chatushloke, the Lord says that in order to show special favor to his pure devotees, he personally eradicates the dense darkness of all misgivings by switching on the light of pure knowledge within the heart of a devotee. So the Lord is personally involved in the lives of his bhaktas. He himself says that I am doing special anugraha for them. Therefore, because of the personality of Godhead's taking charge of illuminating the heart of his devotee, certainly a devotee engaged in his service in transcendental love cannot remain in darkness. He comes to know everything of the absolute and the relative truths. The devotee cannot remain in darkness, and because a devotee is enlightened by the personality of Godhead, his knowledge is certainly perfect. This is not the case for those who speculate on the absolute truth by dint of their own limited power of approach. Perfect knowledge is called parampara, or deductive knowledge, coming down from the authority to the submissive oral receiver who is bona fide by service and surrender. You have Guru, you have Shishya. Guru has learned from his Guru and he's simply transmitting that knowledge to that devotee who has surrendered to Guru and is very submissively trying to hear and serve his Guru. So the best way to learn is through the Guru Parampara system. You don't have to experiment on your own. One cannot challenge the authority of the Supreme and know him also at the same time. It's a very powerful statement Prabhupada is making here. Prabhupada is saying, you cannot say, I know, I have realized Brahman, and still be challenging that Brahman could be this, it could be that, it could be that. Then how can you say you've understood God if you still have so many doubts in your mind? Therefore, Prabhupada is saying, one cannot challenge the authority of the Supreme and know him also at the same time. If you're challenging the position of the Supreme Lord, how can you know him? You've misunderstood the Lord. He reserves the right, he meaning the Supreme Lord, reserves the right of not being exposed to such a challenging spirit of an insignificant spark of the whole, a spark subjected to the control of illusory energy. So if you think about a blazing fire, invariably from that blazing fire, there are some sparks. Can the spark really understand the whole blazing fire? That's quite silly. That spark itself is insignificant, but the spark achieves significance when it merges back with the fire. Here, merges doesn't mean the merging that is one other form of mukti. The devotees are submissive, and therefore the transcendental knowledge descends from the personality of Godhead to Brahma, and from Brahma to his sons and disciples in succession. This process is helped by the super soul within such devotees. That is the perfect way of learning transcendental. So you are hearing from Guru, simultaneously Krishna is also revealing things. He's clearing up and cleaning all the misconceptions. Reminds me of that wonderful song that we sang during Purushottam month, Raje Prasiddham Navanita Chauram, where Bilva Mangal Thakur is saying, I have imprisoned you in my heart. The only thing you have to do is clean, 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 clean. So he's telling the Lord, that's your service to me. You have to clean, that make me pure so that I can come back to you. That means even purity, we are dependent on the Lord. We can't purify ourselves independently. It's just not possible. This enlightenment perfectly enables the devotee to distinguish spirit from matter, because the knot of spirit and matter is untied by the Lord. So if you're confused between body and soul, Krishna clears up that confusion. So he unties that knot that is taking you away from him. Imagine. This knot is called ahankara, and it falsely obliges a living being to become identified with matter. So when you identify with I, me, and mine, that is called ahankara. That's the false ego. As soon as this knot is loosened, therefore all the clouds of doubt are at once cleared off. Who's loosening that knot? The Lord himself. For his devotees, he does that. One sees his master and fully engages himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, making a full termination of the chain of fruitive action. Once and for all, that knot is cut off, and then you are free to express your love for the Supreme Lord in so many different ways, and you just completely surrender to the Lord. In material existence, a living being creates his own chain of fruitive work and enjoys the good and bad effects of those actions life after life. But as soon as he engages himself in the loving service of the Lord, he at once becomes free from the chain of karma. His actions no longer create any reaction. So the minute you become a devotee of the Lord, your karmic reactions, although you may experience it for a little while longer, because as you turn the fan off, the blades still rotate for a little longer before it comes to a full stop. But be assured that once you become a devotee of the Lord, your karmic reactions have been negated by the Supreme Lord Himself. Which will bring us to the last shloka. Ato vai kavayo nityam
Ato vai kavayo nityam
bhaktim paramaya muda
bhaktim paramaya muda
Vasudeva Bhagavati
Vasudeva Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Vasudeve Bhagavati
Kurvantyatma Prasadanim
Arvantyatma Prasadanim.
Ataha.
Ataha.
Therefore,
Why?
Certainly,
Kavayaha.
All transcendentalists, Nityam, from time immemorial, Bhaktim, service unto the Lord, Paramaya, Supreme, Buddha, with great delight, Vasudeve, Shri Krishna, Bhagavati, the personality of Godhead, Kurvanti, do render, Atma, self, Prasadanim, that which enlivens. Translation. Certainly, therefore, since time immemorial, all transcendentalists have been rendering devotional service to Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead, with great delight, because such devotional service enlivening to the self. So, in this shloka, Sutta Goswami is concluding to the sages that even when you perform sadhana bhakti, you are fully satisfied and there will be no difficulties for you. Prabhupada writes, the speciality of devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, is specifically mentioned herein. Lord Shri Krishna is the Swayam Rupa, personality of Godhead, and all other forms of Godhead, beginning from Shri Baladeva, Sankarshana, Vasudeva, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and Narayana, and extending to the Purusha avatars, Guna avatars, Leela avatars, Yuga avatars, and many other thousands of manifestations of the personality of Godhead are Lord Shri Krishna's plenary portions and integrated hearts. So Prabhupada is just bringing the conclusion way up ahead in Srimad Bhagavatam. In the purport, Prabhupada is writing, Krishna is the Supreme Lord, and from Krishna emanates all the other expansions and expansions of plenary expansions or partial expansions of the Lord. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, Lord Shri Krishna is the original form of Godhead, and he is the last word in the transcendency, which means you can't go beyond Krishna. There's nothing beyond Krishna. Krishna is the summum bonum of everything. Thus, he is more attractive to the higher transcendentalists who participate in the eternal pastimes of the Lord. In the forms of the personality of Godhead, other than Sri Krishna and Baladeva, there is no facility for intimate personal contact as in the transcendental pastimes of the Lord at Vrajabhumi. The transcendental pastimes of Lord Sri Krishna are not newly accepted as argued by some less intelligent persons. His pastimes are eternal and are manifested in due course once in a day of Brahmaji, which is 4.3 billion earth years. as the sun rises on the eastern horizon at the end of every 24 hours of Brahma. So with these last two shlokas, in Shloka 21, the results of following the bhakti process is mentioned, which is the hard knot of material desires is loosened away from the spirit soul. And all our misgivings about who we are, what are we supposed to do, what's my role in life, all of that is just rendered useless. Therefore, through that process, when the Lord unties the knot of your material hankerings, your karmic reactions become terminated, because you no longer have any desire. I was having a conversation in the temple today, and I don't know what was the context of the conversation, but I was talking to a few girls, young girls, and something where I said, when you're not looking for anything else and you're searching for Krishna, then all you're saying is, where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? Where is Krishna? And you will go wherever Krishna is. So at that time, there is no more karmic reactions, because you're fixed up. You know who Krishna is, and you're searching for him. Within, you're searching for him in the sevas that you offer in the temple. You're searching for his presence when you decorate him. You're searching for his presence in the association of other devotees. You're searching for his presence when you're serving Guru. In the sense that you know where the Lord is. When I say you're searching for him, you're searching to experience him in your life on a daily basis. Sometimes you experience him very strongly, and sometimes it's like he's not there anymore, even though you're doing your sadhana. So it's this hankering to experience Krishna. It's this hankering to serve Krishna and to serve the devotees of Krishna that is actually being spoken about in Shloka 21. So in Shloka 22, even in sadhana bhakti, there are no difficulties. Any devotee of the Lord, even if he is a neophyte devotee, he will experience bliss in this process of sadhana bhakti. So, which takes us to the concluding section of chapter 2, which will be shlokas 23 to 29, where Suta Goswami is going to tell the sages that actually you should only worship Lord Krishna. So, should you worship the guna avatars of the Lord? Should you worship the demigods? So, this theme of demigod worship and worshipping Vishnu Tattva will come up again in the concluding shlokas of this second chapter of the first canto. So join us next week, Sunday, so that we can have a happy conclusion to this wonderful chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is titled Divinity and Divine Service, which means the Supreme Lord and Bhakti. Bhagavan and Bhakti is how Prabhupada has summarized the title of this chapter.